Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by the Mirror's Simon Bird. It's time for the season preview. Newcastle United welcome Southampton to St James's Park on Saturday, and the season will be officially underway. In this episode, we're going to talk about Newcastle United and what they can achieve this season, and also look at the bigger picture when it comes to the Premier League. Who will win the title? Who will be relegated? And who might surprise a few people? Simon, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Always good to be here.
Yes, it's good to see you. And this is your 24th season covering Newcastle United.
Thanks for that, reminding me of how old I am now and how long I've been in this job. But it's a great job. And yeah, 24th season. I started my job in December 2000 when Newcastle were bouncing around mid-table, finishing 13th, 14th, a couple of years running. Just before Bobby Robson got lift off on that fourth place season. And I think they got fourth, then third, then fifth, and it was all a great start and so upbeat to my career covering Newcastle. And then it went kind of downhill a bit and got a bit erratic and a bit newsy for the wrong reasons. But I have to say, this 24th season, it's kind of you kind of go into it with a lot of confidence and optimism about what's being built at the club. In that they've done really well for 2 years now. Bit of a setback last year, but a setback being seventh place, it's not that much of a setback. And you do feel that this is another season where Newcastle establish themselves in the elite.
Do you remember every kind of pre-season you've covered? Because I was trying to think back today, like how did I feel last pre-season? How did I feel the pre-season before? And the only real pre-season that sticks out, I mean, there was excitement last summer because you had the Champions League coming up.
Yeah,
was the one when Rafa Benitez left and Newcastle went to China and we weren't sure who was coming in to replace him, and then it was Steve Bruce. And I remember that one because there was sadness that Rafa had gone, and then when Bruce came in, there was a bit of anger and a bit of, okay, this is kind of Newcastle United and Mike Ashley, isn't it? Does this pre-season feel different to others?
Well, only in that there's a lot of consistency and uniformity about the approach that the club have got. So there's been no silly change in personnel. Eddie Howe's still there. We know how he works. The players know how he works, and they've got a very solid squad even before transfer window happens, and they've kept their big players. So they've got a really, really solid squad. In terms of memorable pre-seasons, I think you kind of remember the trips and the tours. So I mean, like last summer was amazing, going to 3 cities in America. The season before that, we went to only 2 or 3 of us went to Austria to see them train in the kind of the quiet of the mountains. That was really memorable because at that point you really felt that something they'd survived from relegation, but you could really feel that there was an energy about the whole place that would surprise the league. So yeah, it's hard. Only the pre-seasons are memorable for the trips. Seasons are memorable for what's achieved, and I think I have really vivid memories of the early years when I was covering the club in the 2000s when Bobby was there, Graham Souness, 4th, 3rd, 5th. I had very good and vivid memories of the Pardew season and the one after that when Pardew got them 5th, and then they got the quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup. And after that, with the McLaren years, the Bruce years, some memorable times with Rafa, which stand out, but a lot of it kind of just merges into one. And I couldn't tell you 2018 from 2015 or 2013 or what happened then, or 2014. So there's a lot of seasons which just merge into one in the memory bank. And the last few have been quite vivid memories, which I can recall quite a lot of. So that's a good sign that Newcastle are on the up and doing well.
So this pre-season, they've gone to Australia, they've gone to Japan, and they've gone to Germany. Have you gone to all 3? Or have you just gone to 1 or 2?
No, I didn't go to Japan. That was a very long trip, and we didn't think we were going to get an awful lot of access or kind of much copy out of it. So we did go to Germany, which was a great couple of days. We went to Nuremberg, and then that's very near the Adidas headquarters. So we spent the day at the Adidas headquarters, which are obviously Newcastle's new sponsors. A few of the lads did a tour of the historic strips and historic Newcastle strips, and that was really interesting for everybody. But the most interesting thing was seeing what an ideal kind of training camp it was. The German national team had used it for the Euros, and they'd vacated it, so Newcastle got it when they wanted to have it, and everything was just perfectly on site. The hotel was on site. They had a short bike ride to like the lounge area where there was an open plan, all windows, kind of canteen, which you stepped out onto a swimming pool, which had kind of sports for them to do and be competitive around. We walked through it when the players weren't there, and it reminded me of the scene from Love Island, without the girls. It was like that kind of set with a pool, lounging bits, bit of sport. It looked brilliant. I mean, it would be brilliant to stay there for, and do fitness and sport stuff for a week. And some of the staff were playing paddle. Everything was on site. It looked brilliant. The pitches looked great. We watched a bit of a warm up, but as soon as they started training on the day we did our interviews, Eddie Howe's right, get them out, and we didn't actually see them kick a ball. We only saw them jog around the pitch, because we asked him about that later, and he says, yeah, the training ground's my domain. It's totally private. I do my thing. I do my stuff there. I don't want anyone watching it. So then we did the interviews with Eddie Howe and Joe Linton and Harvey Barnes. Who else did we do? We did Lloyd Kelly. Yeah, so a lot of the players were speaking, and it was a great trip. And kind of the openness of the whole thing, Eddie Howe addressed the England rumours and said he was fully committed to Newcastle and there'd been no offers. So that was huge news the next day. So the players are very open, and it was kind of sets up the season nicely when you get to take the temperature with a few players, people coming back from injury, people who've just been signed, and it all felt very positive, which probably a lot of fans saw at the weekend with the pre-season games.
But just on those Eddie Howe interviews in Germany, obviously you were one of the lucky people who got to speak to him. Back here, it was read in a very negative way that all wasn't well. Was that the way it came across when you're sitting across from him?
Well, I think when you analyse it, we were only a few days into a kind of a new political situation at the club, a new power dynamic. Sporting director, technical performance director, whatever you want to call them, two new characters coming into the club, and Eddie Howe probably not being too sure of what those relationships are going to be like. Probably those two guys taking a bit of power away from Eddie. Or you can couch it as taking a bit of power away from him, or you can say lightening the load and letting Eddie concentrate on where he's best, which is the training pitch, which is how Darren Eales had sold the two appointments. So it was a kind of a weird. It felt like it was Eddie Howe putting down a marker to say that he was still the senior man at the club. He wanted an influence over transfers. He didn't want an awful lot of interference over the way he trains the team. He's got his fitness and medical staff there who are striving to be the best, the best in the business and know everything that's going on, the best practice. So it did feel like there was some uncertainty about the relationships which had developed, which hadn't developed at that time. We were since reassured that maybe that Eddie Howe would get a say in transfers, and there would be shortlists put to him. So I think that kind of calmed things down. I think it was right that he said his piece, and because he's built the club and he's been a lot more than a head coach, let's face it, in the last 2.5 years, working with Amanda Staveley. Amanda Staveley had obviously left, so that was another change that Eddie Howe was very, had a big ally in Amanda Staveley in the ownership group. So it felt like he was putting down from a position of strength, a little bit of a marker. And that position of strength was he's like one of the favourites to get the England job, which he also addressed very cleverly. Actually, there hadn't been an offer, and I think he didn't. If you read the quotes really carefully, there's not an offer for him to respond to, but he didn't say no, I'm not going to manage England this year. He kind of cleverly worded it in that he was happy at Newcastle and he was fully committed, and then he was pushed a little bit more, and in a couple of other interviews saying that the England job's a great job, but it's not there for him yet. So it was kind of a two-pronged interview. He had the strength of being linked with England, and also the little political pop that he was still the man in charge who needed to approve these things and not have too much interference.
Were you shocked when he came out and said what he did? Were you, because I don't think anyone expected him to come out and be as open as he was, and then he wasn't as open as that with the interviews that followed afterwards.
Yeah, with the TV guys, he wasn't quite as political or open. But the way we read it was Eddie putting down a marker that he was the head coach and he needed a lot of control still. Not people signing players above his head, not people telling him that training needed to be different and to lighten the load on the players. He was still the man in charge.
Because I guess as pre-season interviews go, that was probably the most explosive one. Or is there another one that springs to mind?
I don't. I think that's got to be up there. It was certainly the coverage it got. Because he was the number one. He is possibly still the number one candidate for the England job when it comes up permanently. That was big news that day. It was every national newspaper and local paper here, the Chronicle Journal, had it on their back page. And that's unusual for Newcastle to dominate the news agenda. And that's because Eddie Howe has done such a good job in the last 2 and a bit years, that he's actually at the top of the news agenda, and so in Newcastle, because he's done so well. But it was a surprise, yeah.
And all these weeks later, do we think he's got what he wanted by saying that? Do you get the feeling that everything is well behind the scenes?
Yeah, well, I mean, the kind of they're singing from the same hymn sheet, Mitchell and Howe, in that we asked them about we asked both of them, and one of them off the record, what the theory was behind the transfer business that we're going to try and do. And it's not to sign squad players anymore. It's not to bolster the numbers or anything like that. I mean, obviously they've signed Sulu as a potential number 3 striker with potential, but the actual big signings they want now have got to improve the first 11. And they both said that, it's very hard to find, it's very hard to get the deals done, but whoever they sign in whatever position, it's got to be an upgrade on the first 11 they've got now. And that's the only way Newcastle will progress now. So there did seem to be like a kind of marrying up of the aims. Now, behind the scenes, we don't know whether Howe's going to get a player forced on him that he doesn't want. I doubt it, actually. I think there'll be conversations. I think the guy from Sheffield United, or Sulu, Jason Tyndall, knew. So it sounds like Jason Tyndall's had a good input into that. So the manager, the coaching staff are still having an input in transfers. So yeah, so it sounds like it's all settled down. I think that was said. And then just get on with the training, get on with pre-season, go to Japan, come back, win a couple of friendlies. It appears to have calmed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And you mentioned there the exits of Amanda Staveley and Mirdad Kudusi, and also the arrival of Paul Mitchell, the arrival of James Bunn. So there's been a lot of change this summer. How do you think it will impact the start of the season, if at all?
I think there's a consistent enough approach on the training ground and in tactics, and a refresh of what those tactics are that Eddie Howe's done to make it like a continuity season almost. So they had that down patch last year when they had all the injuries in mid-season, but they finished pretty strongly, bar a couple of silly results, and they started quite well. There was a lot of optimism. So I think it's going to be solid. There's not too much change. However, I do think there's a lot of change ahead, because if you look at the squad and the contracts, I think I did a story a few weeks ago that there's 15 players out of contract in a year's time, and a lot of them are over 30, and a lot of them are senior players like Dan Burn, and
a lot of them are first team.
And seven of those 15 are first teamers as well. So they've got some really big decisions between now and January whether they're going to renew those 7 first teamers, who Sean Longstaff's probably the youngest and most valuable of those, whether they renew those contracts or whether they use it as an opportunity to kind of have a really big change around. I'm not sure. I think it'll be in between the two. I think some will go, some won't, because Eddie won't want a huge churn of players in the next season. So some will get new contracts and then some won't. And also there's a lot of leadership kind of group people in that list.
I guess the hope from the players in that list is that it kind of motivates them and inspires them to put in a really good performance this year, so they can win that deal.
Yeah, and they'll see it. I mean, even if it's to get a move elsewhere, a big contract anywhere else, a big European club, because Italian clubs or Spanish clubs might be looking at Newcastle as a way to pinch a player in January or next year. So yeah, I think it could inspire them. I mean, people are playing. I think they're professional enough to be playing flat out for Newcastle anyway. But if you come to the end of your contract, the next few months are the time where you need those talks to start happening. So it will be, people will want to hit the ground running.
Yeah, most certainly. So if you're watching on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up, give the channel a subscription. If you're listening on the audio channel, please leave us a rating and review. It's much appreciated. We'll start with the first question about the new season then, Simon, and what you think the aim is this season for Newcastle United.
Well, this has been like a good debate over the last few years, because we never knew where to pitch this, and we didn't know where Eddie Howe was going to pitch it, or whether he was going to play down expectations or play them up. But this year, everyone's been really clear about it, from Darren Eales to Paul Mitchell to Eddie Howe and the players. They've all said we need to be back in Europe. Joe Linton and Bruno have both said, and they were the first to say it a couple of years ago, we want to get back to the Champions League. I think Eddie Howe, even the other day, if I can remember the quote rightly, was kind of saying, yes, we'd love to be back in the Champions League. So there's been a kind of shift. So 2 years ago, no one would talk about Europe until about the last game. It was like a swear word if you mentioned Europe. But now they kind of know that they're up there, they're in the mix, and they haven't got to talk themselves up because talk's cheap and none of that stuff matters. But they've got to set a bar for themselves to strive for, and they've also got to set a bar for each other. Like Isaac wants to be in Europe, Bruno wants to be in Europe, right at the top because they're amongst the best players in Europe. So they've got to publicly aim for that. So I'd say top 6 is like the minimum requirement this year. And I think if they get a fair run at it, they could be knocking on the door of top 4. But you see what some other clubs have spent, like specifically Chelsea, and how we don't know how they'll do this year. We don't know whether that's going to gel as an amazing team or not. But a lot of people will spend more than Newcastle, and that's the only worry. But with injuries, injured players coming back, Tonali coming back, who's like a new signing, which is that horrible phrase of injured players coming back, then they can aim high.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think in an ideal world, you would say top 4 is a must. Champions League football is a must. That's what a lot of people are saying. But some would say, some would ask, has Eddie Howe been backed enough that is the condition of next season? Because with the arrival of, it's William Sula coming from Sheffield United, then Lloyd Kelly, John Ruddy, like Demos, there's not been that big name signing. Now, we are recording this on the Monday afternoon before it goes out. We understand a third bid has been submitted for Mark Gee, so he might sign before this goes out. I don't think he will do, but he hopefully will arrive before the window shuts. And that is the marquee signing. But even then, it's just the one. And yes, they've got a very talented squad, but a lot of people are saying, has he been backed enough where if he fails to make top 4, then he might pay the price at the end of next season?
Has he been backed enough? That's a really good question. I mean, obviously the club, I think, will back him to the very limits of what PSR will allow. So I don't think it's like a question of the club wanting to hold him back or hold the squad back. They will put as much into the first team buys as they can. If they get Gay for 60 million, it's going to be kind of a hit for the pursuit of a really good upgrade right winger. So that might have to be compromised a little bit. So I don't think they've backed him enough to guarantee to say you must finish top 4, because so many other teams have spent so much. I think if you get top 6, that's kind of where they're in the mix. You've won a load of games, fans are fairly happy, and you get into a European competition. Plus, you have some very good domestic cup runs, which we'll talk about later. So I don't think there's the pressure on him to actually need to deliver top 4. I think top 6, people think that's a great season. Newcastle it'll be 3 years in October since the Saudi takeover when they were in the relegation zones. So it's still rapid progress if you look at it like that.
Very interesting, because I think a lot of people might disagree with you, actually. I think a lot of people will say without European football this season, they've got a really good chance of getting top 4. But then you've also got the players that you've mentioned there in Isaac, in Bruno, throw Joe Linton as well. If they don't get Champions League for the season after, are they really going to be hanging around?
That is a good question. I think that one of the things I did fail to mention there was that I think, like, apart from not signing, the marquee player yet, actually keeping Isaac, because he's one of the best in the world, maybe top 3, top 5 best strikers in the world at the minute. 25 goals for the club last year, incredible haul with a couple of injuries as well. To hold it onto him is actually really good. They've proven that they're players by holding on to him. Same with Bruno. We don't know. Bruno almost certainly won't go now. He's done a press conference. He seemed very happy, and generally think he is happy in Newcastle. But he'll want Champions League football at some point again in his career. He'll want to win something, and there comes a point where there does come a point that you're right. And I think some fans are expecting it now this season, where there's promise and there's been building and there's been signings, and then it's now time to deliver. But there's never a guarantee of when a club's going to deliver because the competition is so hot. I mean, Spurs want their manager to deliver. Chelsea want their £6 zillion 50-player spending spree to deliver. Everyone wants it delivery. Newcastle, I think you're right, though. I think the expectation is brewing amongst Newcastle fans, which does kind of make there be a need for a positive start, just so people aren't whinging and going home unhappy.
I think probably the important question is where you rank the current squad. Again, at the time of recording on this Monday afternoon, Newcastle United, as we say, have added like John Ruddy, like Demos, Lloyd Kelly, and Asoslu to the squad. Is that squad good enough to achieve Champions League football again, or is it just a little bit short?
Well, it's better than the squad that did it 2 years ago. I think probably stronger. So I don't see why not. a lot of these things will depend on what happens in that. So you look at Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, probably just ahead of the rest. Then you've got what will Chelsea do with their spending? How will Aston Villa react to playing in Europe? Will they have a dip like Newcastle did and drop out the top 6, down to 7th? Will their form suffer? Man U, they didn't sack Ten Hag, who had terrible times last year, and they've trusted him to go again this year. Will history repeat itself, and will Man U have another disappointing time? So Newcastle have got to be winning games and well placed to cash in on whichever one of those 3 rivals, Man U, Chelsea, and Villa. Whatever happens to them, Newcastle want to be finishing ahead of that little pack, because I think Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool are probably ahead of them, or should be budget-wise. But there's no reason why, and Spurs as well, obviously, no reason why Newcastle can't mix in with that sort of pack of Man U, Chelsea, Spurs, Villa. I mean, it's a tough top 8, that, when you look at it and you think any of those could finish 4th, and then you could end up really disappointed in finishing 8th.
But then you look at it and you say Newcastle are the only ones without European football, right?
Yes.
Right, yeah. So again, the door is open for them if they can keep everyone fit, and if they can find that bit of form and the bit of luck that they probably were missing last season. That top 4 definitely is an achievable goal.
Well, Villa did it last year by having that kind of excitement in their season, by being up there and challenging. And I think if you can get up there around Christmas and be challenging, then there's a momentum. And like Newcastle's fought, and when they qualified for the Champions League 2 years ago, it was like a juggernaut. You couldn't stop it. The last few games are hard to get over the line, but they were winning relentlessly. They were scoring goals, and if they can just hit that form again, then they can do it. They are good enough to do it, but they need a bit of luck. They need good luck and injuries. They need streaks of like 9 wins out of 11, and that's how you build a season to get in the top 4. So it's kind of tough to do.
And I guess that's where James Bunce comes in, because I do think the key to success is no injuries. That's a lot easier said than done. But if they can keep the nucleus of that squad injury free, then there's no reason why they can't go for the top 4 and get it.
Yeah, I mean, Isaac's the key man, isn't he? I mean, if he's playing and he plays an entire season, he'll get 30 goals next year. Keeping him fit, and he has been a bit fragile in the past, is really crucial. But then if he dovetails well with Callum Wilson, and Callum Wilson stays, Callum Wilson comes into a team and scores for the 5 games that Isaac's out, then you've got a dovetailing strike force with 2 men contributing. And then, I mean, to get top 4, you're going to need the likes of Anthony Gordon repeating last year, or even getting even better with 11, 12 goals and 10 assists. And then Harvey Barnes, who injured most of last season, but Harvey Barnes' goals record is really good for Leicester, and he can get double figures if he's playing. So he'll really fancy kind of pushing kicking the club on. Tonali he got a goal early last season against Villa in that 5-1. He can score goals. So God, it's quite exciting, but they'll have to spread the goals all around and keep people fit.
Do you think they're missing a goal scoring midfielder? They scored a lot of goals last season, but for me, the midfield 3, you need one of them to step up and pop the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, because Joe Linton doesn't get many. Actually, one of the victims of Tonali coming back eventually in mid-September could be Sean Longstaff once Tonali's up to speed, because he might lose his place. But Sean Longstaff proved last year he can ghost into the box and he can smash a few home, and he scored twice on Friday night as well from a similar. And I think Newcastle need some kind of Frank Lampard style midfielder who's lurking on the edge of the box, who can just crack one in from 18 yards through the bodies. And if Newcastle can get 5 or 6 goals, 10 goals like that next season from a midfielder, that's going to be absolutely key.
And how much are you looking forward to seeing Serge Gnabry back playing week in, week out for Newcastle United?
Yeah, I mean, the way Eddie Howe's spoken about it, I think he's back. He can play against Tottenham on September the 1st. I think we'll hear something from him before then, probably in the Italian press. There's a comms plan for his comeback. Doesn't quite involve us just yet, but he's got a preferred interview to do in Italy, I think. So I think he still had a lot to prove last year. I think he's obviously really good on the ball, and Serie A is a different pace and a different kind of level. Not a different level. That's wrong to say. He played for AC Milan, a different style, and I think the Premier League's a bit more up and at him and pacey, and there was a bit of adjustment for him to do. So I think he's good enough on the ball and passing wise. I think closing down and combat wise, I think I want to see him prove himself in that way. But it is exciting to have him back because he's kind of I think it was one of those players whose mystique and stature has grown in the 8 months he's been out, because people are just desperate to see him again. So we'll see how fit he is and how sharp he is. And I think Eddie Howe won't pick him immediately. I think he's kind of hinted that last week. There'll be a plan to reintegrate him because he's not even played in friendlies.
I can't understand the logic behind that.
No, it's mad, isn't it?
I mean, he should be allowed to play in the Cellar Cup. He should be allowed to play on the tours. I mean, when Newcastle, it's not competitive. Newcastle aren't gaining anything from it. It's a very bizarre punishment to hand out. It's just punishing Newcastle United, and they've done nothing wrong in this scenario.
Yeah. So
Newcastle
arranged the friendlies. They hosted the friendlies on their own pitch. It's like, just let them play and just let him have those minutes. It's not a sanctioned game, is it? It's just
it's very strange, strange rule. But there's a lot of players who we can look forward to hopefully seeing injury free in the new season. Joe Linton's up there as well. He's had a really good pre-season. He looked really good on the Friday night of the Cellar Cup. Newcastle had missed him so much last season when he picked up that injury against Sunderland in the FA Cup. So to have him for a prolonged period of time, hopefully all season, is just a massive boost for Newcastle.
Oh, it's huge. And he's got pressure on his place as well this year from Joe Willett coming back. I think Joe Linton is in the driving seat, because just near the press box the other day, you probably saw on Friday night, there were a couple of one-on-one duels where there was scrapping for the ball, and literally Joe Linton just brushes the guy. He shows determination, just knocks him off the ball, and that you would not even standing next to the guy in the mix zone when we interview him. He's rippling muscles. He's got huge arms on him. You just literally, you wouldn't fancy your chances in a duel to get the ball off him at all. So just adding that in front of the left back is massive. He really does add a steamroller quality to the midfield, and he could play higher up the pitch, obviously, as well.
Yeah, he definitely could do. He's versatile, isn't he? And we're also looking forward to seeing the likes of Lewis Hall as well, who came in the side very late last season and probably came in because of necessity rather than choice. But he seems to have taken his opportunity. Obviously, got a long way to improve. He's nowhere near the finished standard yet, but he's looking like worth every bit of the money Newcastle paid for him.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Lewis Hall looked like a bargain, 28 million, rather than when he was on loan last year. Everyone was wondering why the hell they were committing 28 million automatically to Lewis Hall. But in pre-season, he has looked good. He's looked a bit more compact and sharper, and he definitely is. He looks like a Luke Shaw kind of style left back. And if he puts together a good season this year, he's only what, 19? He's really
20
he's
now.
20 now. He's still really young, and in a couple of years' time, he could be England's left back. But there's one thing which the early games, and some of them in the Champions League, Dortmund, when he got hooked at half time 2 or 3 times, I think maybe, there was those games where defensively he's in a duel with his winger, and then a class fullback, a top-notch fullback, experienced, would get the block in, and there was too many crosses coming, I think, to getting through Lewis Hall into the box. He's got to look at those duels and actually win them and get the block in for a corner or whatever. And I think that's one of the basic things he's got to improve on. On the ball and breaking forward, he looks really good, and then he can tuck into midfield. So yeah, quite looking forward to seeing him this season. It looks positive. Looks positive from him.
He turns 20 in September, so
he's still a teenager.
Yeah, a month away till his 20th birthday. Is he first choice left back for you?
Yes, at the minute. You might put Dan Burn there.
And that's the question.
It depends on what you've got available in the centre-back pairing.
Yeah.
It's probably does Lloyd Kelly fit in there at the minute, and then Dan Burn comes out wide? Or do you put Lewis Hall in there? That's one of the really interesting calls that Howe's got to make.
Lloyd Kelly, maybe. So we when we did the Monday show, which obviously was broadcast yesterday, by the time you guys hear this, my back four, for the Southampton game included Lloyd Kelly at centre back alongside Fabian Schär, Hall at left back. But Aaron made the point, well, he's probably not ready yet. He's only played in 2 of the games of the pre-season. Is he match fit? Maybe not.
I might have Dan Burn in next to Shaw, and have Lewis Hall at left back.
Yeah,
that's only a guess. And then who did you put right back?
So, I went for Livramento, but if it was Eddie Howe picking the side, I think it'll be Kieran Trippier.
Yeah, because there was a quote which made me think whether Trippier was guaranteed his place, the other day, maybe on Friday or Thursday, where he said Kieran was coming back and would have to fight for his place. And it looked like that Eddie Howe was, he was thinking about maybe keeping Livramento in. And because Trippier's had a disrupted summer in more ways than one, that you might be thinking about saying fight for your place. But then you saw him on Saturday in the friendly against Brest, and there was a couple of balls pinged out to him, and he knocked them in first time like Trippier does, just on the edge of the area. And you thought, wow, that's a touch of class. That's another tough call, a fullback tough call.
Good to have these calls, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's essential to have the calls, yeah. And then the person who gets the call has got to completely prove himself. I think Livramento will be fed up if he doesn't get the call, having done the entire pre-season.
Yeah,
I think he'll be really annoyed. I think he might stay loyal to Livramento.
You think?
And that'll be a big hint as to whether Trippier is one of the players I think they'll cash in on late in the window for 10 million.
And we're discussing all these choices, and we haven't even discussed Mark Gay yet, who hopefully will come in over the next few days. We'll talk about Gay in a second, but how would you sum up Newcastle's transfer window so far?
Well, it's been okay, but it's you need a marquee signing. It's okay bolstering your squad with Lewis Hall, which is already done, and then the bizarre one of the Greek keeper coming as part of the Elliot Anderson deal, which cost them a lot of money and looks a bit weird. I mean, I don't know where he fits in. John Ruddy, I mean that's bizarre, but there's reasons for it behind the scenes. Yeah, Lloyd Kelly's a good one. I mean, Lloyd Kelly, free transfer, good wages. I've interviewed him for the under-21s when he was under 21 duty for England a few years ago, and he's such a sound lad. He's a total Eddie Howe character, I think, and also one who can get even better. He's a big lad as well, and you see him. Didn't realize he was so physical. So it's okay. I mean, it's but they need every club needs one or two big ones, and the big one's not come in yet. And I mean, it looks like it'll be Gay, but
I mean, that would be a big sign. That's a statement sign, isn't it?
That's
England international.
Yeah. If you sign a current England international who's just played out with skin at the Euros, who's, never put a foot wrong for his club and never said a word wrong anywhere else, with a brilliant character, dead serious about his career, that's a massive signing. And it would be a great signing if they get it done.
Now, a lot of people thought that the centre-back would be more of a right-sided centre-back. He's played on the left side for Crystal Palace and for England. A lot of people thought that maybe Malik Thiaw would come in. What do you think it is about Mark Gay that's piqued the interest of those at Newcastle United, maybe ahead of someone like Thiaw at the AC Milan?
Well, he's more expensive than Thiaw, isn't he? But I mean, the performance at the Euros, the fact that he's English and he's got Premier League experience and he's quick, and I think I think he's right-footed, but he's played on the left. So I think he could probably play either side, and he can play in a 3 if they do a tactical switch around. So, I mean, if he's the outstanding often also Newcastle use deflecting tactics. So
decoys.
If a potential signing comes out, and everyone writes about it and then thinks it's true, and then it doesn't come off because there's something else going on in the background. But did you see that video when Gay was on England duty at the Euros, where they said to him, what's your favorite stadium? What's the noisiest stadium? And it was a little bit alarm bells ringing in the back of my head when I watched it, when he said, it's St James's Park. You can't hear yourself think of that place. It's amazing. I mean, for him to tee up a move whilst on England duty, a potential move to Newcastle, was pretty remarkable. We should have been writing the story then, Andrew.
We should have done, and also very good pals with Anthony Gordon as well, which will hopefully rid him of any doubts that Newcastle is a place for him to be for the long-term future.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, if they were panicking trying to raise the 65 million before the end of June, and if your nose is put a little bit out of joint if a club shows the willingness to sell you or even do a deal, and that's probably that has happened with Gordon. But it looks like he's come back, and that message that by playing on Friday night so soon, like 3 days after coming back to pre-season from the Euros, and then scoring a goal and actually looking speedy and sharp, and that he'd looked after himself in his 3 weeks off, that's kind of a big statement that he's right up there. He didn't need to play in that game. He could have easily got out of it and said to Eddie Howe, I've only been training 2 days, but he played in front of the crowd, gave them a treat of a goal, and I think that shows that hopefully that'll just settle down now.
And he wanted to stay on as well.
Yeah, he wanted to play longer, but Eddie Howe had to take him off and just protect him. So that was a really good message for Newcastle fans.
If the window shuts and only Gay has come in, there's no right winger, how would you be rating the window? Would that be enough to see Newcastle United give the top 4 a really good go?
It might be if everyone stays fit and the formula and the energy from 2 years goes there. Well, it might be. We don't know. I mean, I think they've got enough. If they can cash in early, because the run early on isn't too bad, and we were looking at what would be like an acceptable points total from the first 5 games, and maybe like, I don't want to put the pressure on, but 4 wins and a draw, is it? Or
4 wins and a draw.
Read out who they've got.
So what we'll do now is Newcastle versus Southampton. I think you've got to go for a win there at home, haven't you? Bournemouth, Newcastle.
Well, you got to beat Bournemouth, haven't you? Come on.
Well, they've lost the star man as well, haven't they?
They've lost to Lanky.
So yes, you got.
So you win there. So you're top of the league then after 2 games.
Is this going to look? We have had internet connection issues, right? September, you've got
they got Spurs,
Newcastle versus Spurs, but
you might get if you win that, you're really happy, but you might put that down as a draw.
Well, I mean, the history up here, Spurs suggests it's another 6-1 win or something, doesn't that? So I think you go for a win there as well.
Okay,
then
that's really optimistic.
That's 9
so
points.
So that's runaway leaders after 3 games.
Then you got Wolves at Molineux.
Oh, that's if you get 4 points from.
Then you've had a 2-week break as well, haven't you? So
yeah.
But we know Newcastle on 2-week breaks.
Well, why don't you put that as a draw?
Put that as a draw, okay.
So you're still hanging on the lead.
Then Fulham versus Newcastle.
You've got to beat Fulham.
Yeah, okay. So, okay. And then to finish off September, City are the visitors to St James's Park.
Well, I mean, you'll be happy with a draw.
Okay.
But you can lose it.
Okay, so, we'll just do a little bit of realism. We'll put it at the feet there.
So 18 points up for grabs. How many points you got there?
4 wins and 1 draw and 1 defeat.
13 points out of 18. It's Champions League.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys would love to have whatever we've just been having before we've started recording. Yeah,
it's that easy to win games.
Yeah,
we just.
But I do think the opening run is such a run that Eddie Howe has to have a good start. And obviously, look, they're probably not going to collect those amount of points that we've just suggested there. But you would want to see, I think, at least 3 wins from the opening 6 games. I think
you maybe want 4 wins and 2 defeats isn't a bad return. 12 out of 18 is not a bad return. 3 wins and 3 draws. You're all right, undefeated. I mean, if you got it. I mean, we're running away with this and just and placing them right at the top of the league immediately. But it is a good run. It is a good start.
I don't think there's a month in the season where you go, oh my God, where are the points going to come from? Where there was times last season where they had a horrendous run of games. I don't think it's too bad. I don't think the entire season is that bad.
Right. So there's not a stack of top 6 games where you could really lose it.
I think maybe November, December there's maybe 2 or 3, but I don't think I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was at times last season. And of course, hopefully they stay injury free as well, which we just keep going back to. Your player of the season. So we're going to do kind of a quick fire prediction for Newcastle first off. So who is going to be the player of the season for Newcastle United?
Well, I think it'll be Bruno Guimaraes. I think hopefully they're going to tweak his role in that Bruno did so much running last year, covering like a couple of midfield positions almost, that I think if they can refine it, and I think he might want to refine it, and make him kind of more of an attacking creative player, exploiting the gaps further forward, and have someone else doing a bit of the duties behind that, then I think Bruno can be an even more creative player and add a few more goals. And I think he might emerge as the standout hero of the hour of the season.
What did you make of his little Maradona turn in the box against Brest? A lot of people have been praising that. If I was Eddie Howe, I don't think I'd be so happy with it. A bit risky.
Risky, but it was the sunny pre-season friendly against the French.
You don't want him doing that against Southampton on the open day this season, maybe. Do you think he's going to be captain?
Well, he's in. Has he been voted? He's been voted into the leadership group this summer, which is a good sign. And I think he'll be vocal. I'm sure you could be vocal in the dressing room and cheer everyone up. And he kind of leads by example. I mean, he leads by example by staying fit. And he spoke the other day to us about it's not just the team that he's got at the training ground looking after him, the Newcastle staff. He's got his own physio and masseur and all that kind of stuff behind the scenes, helping him when he goes home. It's probably a big reason why he played 64 games he played last year. A remarkable fitness record for combative midfielder who's in the thick of the action. So it's just fingers crossed that he's fit and influential this year. And I think he will be. I think he's going to be brilliant. He always is.
Yeah.
Plays with a smile on his face, and it's just so refreshing to see how he enjoys it.
I just hope that focus that we saw when he had to avoid the yellow card last season is still there, because he became a better player, I think.
Yeah,
he wasn't diving in. He wasn't, mouthing back at the referee. He wasn't getting wound up by the opposition, and his mind was just focused, and hopefully that comes over to this season.
Yeah. He looked a player more in control of himself, didn't he?
Definitely.
At that point.
I mean, this is going to be an easy one. Newcastle United's top scorer.
Well, Isaac. So, but can he blitz it? The challenge to him is, can Isaac blitz a few of Alan Shearer's records? I mean, if you look at the stats, Shearer got 28 one season, and in the Premier League, I'm talking, not just the cups. He was right up there last year with 25. I think he's got to be aiming for the Golden Boot this year. I mean, Isaac, he was kind of on the cusp of it last year with 2 or 3 games to go. A hat-trick would have put him right up there. Others leapt ahead of him eventually, but he should be aiming for the Golden Boot against Haaland, definitely. And if he can get 25, 30 goals for the club, that would be magic.
He's looked so dangerous. I mean, against Girona on Friday, he looked frightening. Yeah,
he's not like a normal centre forward. Like he's almost more talented football-wise than Haaland. That's kind of a ridiculous thing to say. But he can dribble, he can do tricks, he can go past people from deep. Plus he scores those nicks and goals and headers, and he scores everything. So he scores every type of goal. So he's so exciting, and he's so elusive around the box. If he can get him turned and going in on goal against the centre half, or in behind, then he's going to score loads. And he'll be the top scorer, hopefully, if he's fit. But he will be top scorer if he's fit. Just a question of how many they can get.
30 goals. I'm going to be confident. 30 goals this season.
Got to be the top.
Surprise package for you?
Well, we've touched on him already. I think from low expectations mid-season last year after his disappointing Champions League cameos, I think Lewis Hall will be the potential surprise package. And if he has a full season playing left back and can hold that position down, get 2 or 3 goals like he did last year, then he could be knocking on the England squad door, because there's an opportunity there. There's not that many left backs around, not that many specialist left backs. So I'm hoping Lewis Hall will come good and be the surprise package.
I'm going to go for Harvey Barnes. Look, the surprise package is quite a broad term, isn't it? But I think there's a lot of questions still over Harvey Barnes. I think he's going to be absolutely brilliant in the new season. I think he's going to offer Newcastle United a lot. We again saw glimpses of it against Preston on Saturday, and we've seen, especially from the bench last season, the game against West Ham, for example. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. I think he's going to shut a lot of people up as well. I still think he's got huge amounts to offer Newcastle United. Yeah,
no, good call. And he could be like that Frank Lampard type, outside the box, cut inside, smash it home. He's scored a few of those for Newcastle already, and it seems to work. It's a good move.
Yeah, he's just got to stay, again, injury-free, although it was a very strange injury, wasn't it? That cost him the majority of his season. But yeah, my pick there for surprise package. Most improved player? Are you going to give this one to Lewis Hall as well, maybe?
No. Ooh, most improved player. Wow.
I'm going to go with Sean Longstaff.
I was thinking that was the name that was...
Because it's a big season for him.
Yeah.
He needs a new deal. He also, obviously, he's got to get into that team and keep his place as well. He knows Tonali's coming behind him. He knows Joe Willock will be back as well, fighting for his place. I think Sean Longstaff will be the most improved. And last season, he did improve. He got the goals.
He was getting there, yeah.
So I think if he can do that again and push himself to another level with the added motivation of knowing if I do well, I can get a new deal. For me, I think I'd like to see him get double figures in goals. And if he does that, you can't argue with the most improved title.
No, that's the name I was thinking of there before you said it. And I do think Sean Longstaff needs a bit of love. I mean, local players are judged quite harshly and always have been. At Newcastle, the local lads, Shola, Stephen Taylor, people like that, but they're actually brilliant servants to the club. And Sean was a better player last year. He scored in the Champions League, I haven't got the stats from me. Did he get 8 goals? 8 goals last year?
I think it was 8 goals, yeah.
So he did really chip in with goals last year. And I think not many players, possibly even Tonali, haven't got the legs that Sean Longstaff's got. He's got running power, which fits perfectly with the style that Newcastle play. And Tonali's got to get that and prove he's got it to get in ahead of Longstaff.
But looking at his stats, you can see where the issue is. So, when he brought into the side in 2018-19, 1 goal. next season, 1 goal. Obviously, there was injuries there. No goals in 2020, 21, 1 goal 2021, 22, 1 goal 2022, 23, 6 goals in the Premier League last season. He got 8 overall. So you can see maybe where his main weakness is, and it's the fact that he doesn't get enough goals. But as we've said, no one across the midfield three really does. So I think if he can be the goal scoring midfielder, then that's where his success next season lies. And fingers crossed he can do. Who's going to be the breakthrough?
Are we talking youngsters?
We're talking youngsters. I mean, we could even talk about a senior pro who's just going to realise what he's got. I mean, Jacob Murphy, for example, could this be his last season?
He's another one who doesn't get a lot of love. I mean, I've never interviewed Jacob Murphy, so he seems like a really funny, quirky guy who would be a really interesting interview, but he kind of doesn't do them. He just plays his football. That's a good shout, that, because Eddie Howe's spoken about him, about how he's improved as a player, and he does seem to be improving every year. Under Howe and the structure of the team. I don't think call him a breakthrough after being here.
I was going to say, we're pushing it slightly. I guess if we do look at youngsters, then there's one man who's impressed in the last couple of games, and that's Sanusi, who just looks like he just looks like such a talent, but very raw.
He is incredibly raw, and you can tell he's really young. So he's not got the physicality yet, but that's because he's 17. 17. So, but he fitted in on that pitch, and Kieran Trippier actually had a proper word with him after the friendly the other day and said, "Are you all right? What do you think of that?" And he gave him a couple of tactical hints. So they obviously taking him seriously. The senior players are taking him seriously. Eddie Howe thinks it's too soon to send him out on loan, so there's no point in sending him to the Championship to be kicked around. So he's going to be kept in house. I think he needs building up, and he needs a bit more stamina. He was blowing a bit the other day, but on the positive side, he kind of looks a bit like Doku from Man City. He's kind of Newcastle's version of that, but maybe in 2 years' time, 3 years' time. So incredible pace, a brilliant jink one way or the other. If you can knock the raw edges off him, make him stronger and sprintier, faster, then he could be a talent. Yeah, but I mean, obviously, they've got a lot to prove, these young lads, and they've got to fight for the minutes.
I was going to say, you've been doing this long enough. I'll just remind the ladies and gents listening and watching, 24th season coming up. You've probably seen a lot of youngsters who you might have termed, the next big thing, or, the one who's going to have that breakthrough season. It hasn't always worked out that way.
Yeah, but there are some who immediately make an impact. So like Shola Amiobi, when he early on in my 24-year career, thank you. There are others who are older, by the way. Like Shola Amiobi made his debut against Chelsea, I think.
Yeah, Dennis Wise met him.
Dennis Wise met him, and Dennis Wise is down here. Shola's up there, and Shola stood on his toes or something, and just like asserted himself against the Chelsea hard man. And at that point, you think, yeah, he's got something about him. So there's always a moment where you think, yeah, that kid, that youngster's definitely got it. There are some like don't quite make it. Like Dan Barleza came on in a youth game, in a cup game, lowly cup game a few years ago, and you thought, oh, he's all right. He can knock it round. He's had control in the game, and he didn't make it at Newcastle, but he's gone on to have a great career in the Championship, and he's been at Borough, and he takes in a mean corner. So there are people who you think they might not be top level, but they're going to make it. And you can tell immediately just by the way they influence the ball.
Do you look at the likes of Lewis Miley, for example, who we've seen a lot of? Do you look back at last season and think, yeah, he's got a long-term future in the Newcastle United first team, or is it too early to say?
Well, I think they can. Yeah, I mean, he has got a long-term future. He has to, because he's proved he can play at that level and he can make goals at that level. So that's incredible. I think he'll have to kind of. I mean, I just wondering if he's got the physique to become like a Vieira style holding midfielder. Has he got the running power for that? Like you run at the minute. I quite like my sprinting and did it all that when I was a kid. And I think at the minute he runs a bit. He doesn't quite run as it's flowing. It's a bit shuffly. He doesn't. His feet don't get too far. I think he needs a bit of sprint coaching and a bit of building up in that kind of area.
I always look back at Elliot Anderson in the summer he had. That pre-season summer where he impressed. It was last summer, wasn't he? He impressed in America. And when he'd been in the gym all summer, then he got the pre-season. You could see instantly the difference. He'd bulked up. He'd been doing the weights. And so it can happen.
Yeah.
It can happen as quick as that, where suddenly they come back from being stick thin to actually having a bit of muscle about them and being able to handle themselves.
But you can't make judgments on Miley now. He'll be in the squad and he'll hopefully get some minutes. But you can only judge him when he's 21, 22, and he's going to be. Hopefully, he'll keep getting better and get longer in the team.
Of course, not the only Miley brother either. Jamie has got better as the summer's gone on. He played very well against.
I thought he did all right. He looked a bit like Bruno. Actually, ran a bit like Bruno. Obviously, he's not as good as Bruno yet, but he did look like he had something about him. So there's two Mileys there. Jamie's got all the publicity, but the other Miley kind of ticked things over quite nicely and filled that hole. I don't know whether he could really influence the first team, but I think like Newcastle Academy is not just about producing. They want to produce people for the first team here, but that's going to be a small number of elite kids who come through. It's also about making players who can have a career anywhere at the highest level possible. Now, can the other Miley can he have a career in the Championship, or can Newcastle loan him out and get a loan fee? And you kind of make money back on your academy by selling players who are not going to make it for you, but can make it elsewhere.
Well, there's a third Miley as well.
And there's a third Miley. He's younger, isn't he?
Yes, he's.
I remember this picture last year when I knew the Mileys had gone big time when they had their pajamas on at Christmas.
Yes,
together.
Did the rounds.
I don't know how well advised that picture was.
Must be something in the water up in Anfield, playing with all the players they're producing. Let's look at the wider picture then in the Premier League. Let's start with your pick for champions.
I'll go Arsenal.
Arsenal.
I think Man City. Well, they've lost Alvarez and they've sold him, so they're worrying he got 80 million quid to spend. But I'm thinking Arsenal with that experience last year, if they can, get a striker in, maybe make a good signing in the next 3 weeks, they'll be up there. I would like someone different to win it to Man City. I'd like it to be mixed up a little.
Yeah, I agree with that I would like it to be someone different, but I can't look past Manchester City. I think they've just got too good of a squad. The only thing that might destabilise them is the speculation over Pep Guardiola's future.
And the charges coming up, the
hearing
of the charges and the potential points deduction, which
but
I don't think will happen this season. I think it's probably next season.
They've handled all the outside noise very well. I think there's always been speculation over Guardiola's future until he signs a new deal, and it never seems to have bothered them before. And you just look at their first 16, 17 players. They're just brilliant.
They win at the right time. February onwards, they just push on and get the job done. I think maybe you're right. Man City's point of weakness might be next year, not this season, the season after, when a few issues, massive issues, have unravelled. Yeah,
something coming down the road. But for me, Man City champions. Who makes up the rest of the top six then?
Well, I've got I've got Man City second, so they're going to be knocking on the door. I'm hoping for a three-way title race this year till as late as possible with Liverpool up there.
I'm not sure for Liverpool.
You don't know how he's going to do.
I just think it's a massive hole to fill. It's Jurgen Klopp, the success he had, the connection to the crowd, to the cop, and I just always think back to David Moyes coming in Manchester United, a great manager. He'd earned his stripes, got the seal of approval from Alex Ferguson, and Klopp has done similar with Slot, but I don't know. I just think I would never want to be that manager.
Yeah. You're right. You want to be the one after him to rescue it. You don't want to be the successor. But they have got a good squad, and amazing players, and a way of playing which he will probably tweak and make a little bit better. So still going to go Liverpool third and a three-way kind of chase for the title, and then it gets really difficult to even fit big clubs into the top six or top seven. I mean, who are you leaving out of the top eight, of the top six? Are you leaving Villa, Newcastle, Spurs, Chelsea, Man U?
You see, I've written down my top six here, top seven here, and I even now looking at it, and I wrote this down just before we started recording, and even now I think that looks a bit daft, but I've got City, Arsenal, Spurs third, Newcastle fourth, Liverpool fifth, West Ham sixth, and then Manchester United. So I've got Villa finishing down in eighth.
Me too.
But okay, so maybe it's not
I've
as
got
daft.
Villa in eighth because I think they're gonna have other distractions. So we'll optimistically try, and they've had a bit of a rejig as well. They've sold people, haven't they? So,
but they bought well though.
They bought well.
Yeah, bought well, and he's a manager who handles European competition really well. Does he? Unai Emery, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He knows what he's doing. So he could rotate things quite nicely. And yeah, I mean, it's so hard. I mean, it's a real battle even to get 6th. So
I've optimistically put Newcastle 4th. Where have you got them?
I've got them 6th.
Okay.
But I like to err on the side of pessimism. I might say, okay, 5th, and I'm disagreeing with myself. I've got the notes here. I've changed my 4th position 3 times. So at the minute, I've got Man U in 4th. I don't quite know what it's based on. I mean, just because they're a big club.
You alluded to at the start of the show, I think keeping Ten Hag in is a massive gamble, and I think it's going to backfire. I think it's going to backfire.
I'm happy for you to be right.
Yeah, so I can't understand it. I just can't understand why they've kept them in. I mean, maybe because a target that they were going to replace him with isn't out there.
Yeah.
But I just think that's a huge gamble. I really thought they would have gotten rid of him.
Yeah. They had some grim times last year where it was like shambolic, wasn't it? There was not a performance. They couldn't get a performance.
And you could see the whole speech out after the FA Cup victory as well. It seemed desperate. It just didn't seem like a happy place to be. And
why have I put them 4th?
I don't know.
That's a foolish move, boy. I've got them 4th.
Okay.
But I mean, I can rejig it later.
I think Spurs is an interesting one. I think they've gambled on Solanke.
Yeah.
For a lot of money. I would like to have seen him have another season where he hits the highs of last. I think that's a big move. They've not always had success when it comes to big money striker signings of Spurs.
Yeah.
And again, they were a bit up and down last season. But I have got them going 3rd here. But that's based on Solanke scoring goals.
20 goals.
Yeah. He's the difference. He's the key there, I think. Where have you got them?
Well,
you're scribbling things.
I'm rejigging it. I mean, it's like.
For those not watching, I mean, there are a lot of crossing out on Simon's list.
I mean, we've got Man U in 4th. I've got Spurs in 5th. I've just relegated Chelsea to 7th.
I haven't got Chelsea on my list.
You've forgotten about Chelsea, and they've spent £3 squillion.
Do you know what though? He's another managerial gamble. I cannot for the life of me understand why they've done that.
That's why I've just relegated them to 7th, and I've elevated Spurs to 5th. And I've kept Newcastle in 6th. But there is an argument to say that really Newcastle could finish 4th because they're not in Europe, and that's worth 6 points, say, energy-wise.
I think West Ham's an interesting one as well. I think Lopetegui's an absolutely fantastic appointment. I think he's a very good manager, and they've signed a man that you recommended Newcastle United should have gone after. Do you remember? Yeah,
John.
It was about this time last year, actually.
Yeah, because I'd been on holiday to Nice.
Yes,
and I'd got a cheap ticket in the back of the stand for €8 plus a pint in Nice, and it was, and he was the standout player that day. You could tell he was the one who he could step forward in midfield. He pinged a lovely ball for an assist, and I think I did a tweet saying if Newcastle want a right-sided centre back, we should look at Todibo, but. Obviously, he's gone somewhere else.
He's gone to West Ham.
They listen to you. Newcastle got Fabian Schär. They don't need that position filling.
No,
he's brilliant.
But it's going to be interesting to see how their signings do. And as we mentioned, Villa as well. They've like Ross Barkley and Onana as well, which I don't think many Newcastle fans would have turned down. Obviously, that midfield's already very oversubscribed, but in terms of talent and ability, it's going to be interesting to see how they get on, especially without Louise as well in the middle. Surprise! I mean, I'm not even going to ask you to clarify your top 6 because, like me, you've changed it
by the second.
Okay. But a surprise package in terms of a team.
The surprise package, but I mean, I've gone for Wolves. I think they can really upset a few people this year. Gary Neal had great runs last year, although they've sold Neto, player. But I think Gary O'Neil is a really bright coach, and he might mix it. The other ones, like not Forest, like having been relegation candidates, I think Forest always have the potential to put a run together and do something daft. You know,
they're a very talented squad.
Really talented. If like a gel, they could get top half and kind of usurp Brentford and Palace and teams like that who were knocking on the door of like top 10.
If West Ham finished 7th, as my original list is, they would have to be the surprise package. But I've got Forest written down as well.
Have you?
In terms of the surprise package, because I just think Morgan Gibbs-White, Elanga, Murillo, they've got a lot of talent players. Chris Wood seemed to find his goal-scoring boots last season. If they can get the other striker fit and scoring goals, he looks like when he is fit, he looks like a very talented player. Yeah. So Forest, I think, could get into that top 10.
Yeah.
And surprise a few people. Wolves, as you mentioned, I do think I think Bournemouth might end up falling away. because they've sold
Yeah.
Solanke. I think that might hurt them a lot more than maybe the price tag is worth. But obviously, didn't stand in their way.
Yep.
In terms of the teams going down,
well, I mean, I like the teams that get promoted to give it a shot and stay up. So Ipswich, Southampton, Leicester, who's got the best chance of staying up amongst those? I think possibly Leicester and Southampton. Ipswich might. I don't know. They've got a great coach, but have they got the firepower? I'm not sure. So, but I always like to. I look at who's vulnerable. Who an established Premier League team always gets pulled into the mix and is vulnerable. And I think Everton. I mean, at risk of another points deduction possibly, and like you said, Bournemouth, Brentford had a bit of a slump. So there's Everton, Bournemouth, Brentford out. Brentford would probably be coached out of it and recover because they're going to keep Ivan Toney, I think. So I'm worried for Everton.
Again. I think losing an honour, big blow,
huge blow, and if they get dumped on with a points deduction again, could be dodgy times for them.
Ipswich, interesting one because I was a big advocate of Newcastle having a look at Liam Delap. He's gone there. I mean, if he scores goals, goals is what keeps you up. So they'll be hoping he can grab a few and keep them. But I think you're right. A little bit of concern for Everton, a little bit of concern for Bournemouth, but I just don't think you can look past the 3 promoted sides.
Yeah, it often works out like that, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, Leicester and Southampton have been there recently. Ipswich haven't. So, I mean, there's promotion and relegation. It's kind of they bounce around a bit, don't they? It's very hard to pick who will get promoted this year. Can Luton replicate what they've done in the Championship, come back up? But yeah, I don't know. It is difficult for teams to survive who just come straight up.
Is there a particular player outside of the Newcastle United squad that you're really looking forward to seeing?
Oh God, now you're testing me of knowledge of Premier League exciting players. Is the one that you've got, Andrew?
I'd like to see Delap do well. I'd like to see if the likes of maybe Langa can continue the good form of last season. I know Haaland as well. He seemed to have a bit of a. I mean, he was top scorer, but there was a lot of criticism from last season. So I'm intrigued to see how he gets on.
I have got one, and Newcastle fans will take a big interest in it as well. Minter.
Yes, of course.
He's looked pretty amazing and has had some good finishes in the pre-season games. And you do wonder whether, 30 million plugged a hole this summer, but is he going to be worth 60 or 70 in a couple of years' time? And Brighton end up selling him to major players. And also Elliot Anderson, I think we'll keep a close eye on him. I mean, 35 million seemed a lot to get for him. He hasn't scored for Newcastle. But I think if that team trusts him and gives him the ball in tight situations, I think Elliot Anderson can have a big impact there. So yeah, I like the lads. I'd like the people who've left Newcastle, especially Elliot Anderson, to do well and keep an interest in them.
Yeah, it'd be brilliant for Anderson to do well at Forest, and I'm sure he will get his first team opportunities. All that remains to be done then, Simon, is just to clarify where Newcastle United, in your prediction, are going to finish next season.
Well, I'm sticking with 6th. I'm moving everyone around them, but I'm sticking with 6th. But I'm saying that because they're going to be massively distracted by the domestic clubs. So they're going to have 15 games. How many rounds are there in the cup?
Oh, you're testing us now. It's quite a few, though, isn't it?
6 each.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll say 12 or 13 games, right, including 2 finals.
So they're getting to
both,
and 2 bus parades as well.
2 bus parades, one in March, at the start of March, one in May. I think they have got to go all out, full guns blazing for the Carabao Cup again. I mean, no nonsense. Cash in on the other big rivals being in Europe and messing around with their teams. Just go for that Carabao Cup and get to a final. And it's just like, I mean, you can never. It's like people criticizing silver medalists at the Olympics. You can't criticize a silver medal because it's so hard to do. Gold's so hard to do. Winning something, being in the top 6 is so hard to do in this competitive. The best league in the world, the most competitive league in the world we've got. So you can't criticize. You know, if they jig around a bit, that top 7, you can't criticize them as long as they're there. Getting over the line in the cup or having a season which basically, like you said before, what stands out in the memory? All those memories are made of cup finals, amazing wins and semi-finals and the celebrations afterwards. We need another season where extra layers of your club history is given to fans.
It is interesting, though, and I mentioned this on the Monday show. There was a poll that went round. Sky Sports had done it, they'd ask Newcastle United fans what would they prefer. The majority who took part in this poll voted for top 4 football over a cup win.
Yeah.
Fans on social media took offence to that and said, I don't know who you were asking. It's got to be a cup win.
Yeah.
But I do sit here and I do think, what do the boardroom think? Because from a fan's perspective, yes, you want that cup win. You want another day at Wembley, but this time Newcastle United win it. But from a business point of view, what's more lucrative? What's going to grow the club faster and quicker? Is it top 4 football?
Well, I think there's an argument that globally the FA Cup is so well watched that if you win the FA Cup, profile-wise, I think that's much, much bigger than finishing 4th in the Premier League.
Is it got to be top 6 and a cup, or is it just top 6 and top 6?
If they finish 7th and they won a cup, I think anyone would be complaining because they'd be in Europe. Yeah. So top 7 in a cup, no cup or a cup final and 6th. That's kind of all right.
But again, is it just European football? I mean, is European football a must, regardless of whether it's conference?
Yeah, they've got to get to Europe next year. They've got to get into that cycle where they're used to playing in Europe on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night, whatever competition. Just get into that bracket whereby people are looking at the UEFA website, UEFA games that are available midweek, and Newcastle are amongst that. It just elevates you to another level in terms of what other people are thinking about you, targets, potential targets, other rivals. So, yeah. But Carabao Cup, come on. There'll be people getting to the semi-final of that, Spurs, whoever, who will tweak their teams in the semi-finals because they've got other games.
It was just injuries that cost them last time. Yeah. Kieran Trippier cost them, but it was predominantly injuries that really hit them in the cup runs, wasn't it?
Just that cup. They've got it at some point. Fans are expecting the takeover, the relaunch of the club to deliver something. Now that's a pressure. That is a pressure on Eddie Howe and the players. And the sooner they get rid of that, the better. I mean.
And then the season coming is the season that pressure is released.
The pressure is released if you win the cup. Then it becomes easier. The first one that you win, and then you can get through the dodgy 1 hour to 80 minutes or the dodgy last 10 minutes that you've got to hang on. Once players know they can do that and win a cup, then everything becomes easier. They've got that total belief in themselves that they've come through the most pressured circumstances and delivered it. So that's what the club needs, 100%.
Okay, well, I'm going to go top 4. I'm going to go 4th place and a cup final. Whether they'll win it or not, I'm not too sure. You are going 6th in a cup win?
7th in a Carabao Cup win.
There we go, ladies and gents. We definitely take that, most certainly. Thank you very much for tuning into the Everything is Black and White podcast. Thanks to Simon, as always, for popping on and providing the season preview. Give us a like, give us a rating and review as well, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. For myself and Simon, we'll see you guys very soon.